Hello, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the Jason Howell Company's speaker series, Zoominars. My name is Jason Howell, and today we've got a really important topic, climate risk and sustainable insurance. With the recent news of Hurricane Helene and our neighbors in North Carolina and Tennessee still going through the cleanup and the rebound, we have another hurricane coming, Hurricane Milton, rushing up to the coast of Florida. How does business respond to this? How can we respond to this, whether it's through policies, whether if you are a financial advisor, whether if you are a normal citizen who's looking at the insurance products that you might be using with your family? How can we make sense of all of this? With us today, we have a great guest, Mr. Nathan Irons, who's the founder and CEO of Bluestone Life. And he has worked in and around this space for a long time. He brings his mind, he brings his heart to this idea of sustainability, and we're very lucky to have him to poke him with a bunch of questions. But before we do that, let's just get to know Nathan. Nathan, welcome to the Zoominar. How has your day been so far?
It's been great. Thank you for having me. Had a good start with my girls this morning, and I live in Vermont, so we have another beautiful fall day here. So I couldn't ask for more.
It's funny you should say you live in Vermont. I just spoke with someone who is in the sustainability space in Vermont, who's thinking about her next chapter. And I was wondering if this call would have anything to do with her. And it's the first thing you say. You remind me that you're in Vermont. All right, I'm going to have to make a connection for you. Please remind me when we're done with this.
Yeah, will do. Thank you.
Absolutely. So it's a beautiful day in Vermont. It's actually a beautiful day out in the Washington, D.C. area as well. We're in the 70s. It's sunny. It rained all of last week, probably again, remnants from Hurricane Helene. So we're happy to see the sunshine.
Yeah, we are too. We've had a spectacular fall here. You get the geese coming through and foliage starting. So yeah, it's a magical place to be this time of year.
Vermont is known for it. All right, I'm gonna share our screen here and let folks start to learn from you. So if you're here looking to hear more about climate risk and sustainable insurance, you've come to the right place. Nathan, we're really glad that you're here. I think people are going to get to know your expertise and learn a lot from you, have a baseline for learning more in the near future. So I'm looking forward to getting started.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we do, just a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor is Jason Howell Company. Jason Howell Company is a family wealth management firm specializing in sustainable investing and family governance. We're able to compete with some of the most well-known private bank and wealth advisors by forming a virtual office with a team of experts and specialists. Experts like Mr. Nathan Irons. We're based here in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., but we serve clients nationwide. For more about Jason Howell Company, just go to jasonhowell.com. And with that, let's talk about Mr. Nathan Irons. So I was glad to get your bio. It certainly was very descriptive of not only the things you've done work-wise, but also what you tend to care about. And before we get into some of the environmental pieces of what you've done, I'd love to hear just a snippet. And I think everyone else too would get value from hearing about your experience in the Navy. That was a critical piece of your foundation. Please share a little bit of that.
Yeah, it was. I come from a family that does not have, very many people have had military service. I had one uncle, biological father, who was in combat with the Marines in Vietnam. So I'd always had in the back of my mind that part of service was very different than how the rest of my family provided service. But there was that combination of had some incredible women I grew up with my grandmother, mother, and a couple of my aunts in particular that always had a very strong, push, constantly reminding, how have you helped out your community? Are you being responsible with nature and what we're given here, being fortunate growing up in Vermont. And I always thought the military was a great complement to that as another kind of service, applying to the entire country, not just your state and your community. So it was an invaluable experience for me. One of the key things anybody that went through basic training in the Navy will remember very well is the phrase, pay attention to detail. You hear that sometimes hundreds of times in a day. And it's tied very specifically to the complex situations that you're in. Like I happen to be stationed on an aircraft carrier, and the number of moving parts and people and things like paying attention to detail are incredibly important, have direct ramifications if you don't pay attention to detail.
Yeah.
So that's incredibly valuable to me, along with you're thrown in with thousands of other people with very different backgrounds from all around the country. That part of the experience was also invaluable for me. I really appreciated my time.
Well, and somehow, not only that upbringing with the women in your life, as you mentioned, that really helped you pay attention to nature, but then the background with the Navy and pay attention to details. Those two things coalesced, and you came out of the naval and family experience as an entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about that.
That was also a surprise to my family.
Yes. Okay.
It was my uncle, who happened to have also served in the Army, that when I got out of the Navy and I asked him what he thought I should do, he's like, well, your family's not rich and you don't have an Ivy League education. So I would recommend that you find something where you can learn as much as possible and work as hard as you want because you're willing to work hard. He said, I think if you learned about finances, that would be extremely helpful. So that's what led me into the path of going and starting to mentor at an organization that I learned a lot about taxes and pensions and investing and insurance and how all that risk management and back to paying attention to detail helped a lot. So that's what led me into financial services and the entrepreneurial side of it, because I wanted to see things done in a different way that would blend the value of traditional finance with the concerns I had around systems change, primarily in the environmental and social space.
Well, systems change. Yeah, it's a very big little phrase, for
Yes.
sure. And so you founded an advisory firm, much like we founded an advisory firm here, and yet you went from having a registered investment advisory firm to then what 12 years later founding Bluestone Life. And now tell us about what you saw as missing in the insurance landscape, which is as far as financial tools, insurance has been around forever. But
Yeah.
you found something, you found a niche in there that an opportunity to serve in a different way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. In my advisory practice, I was always drawn to the what I found to be interesting and complicated, where the different parts of, again, taxes and asset protection and all these different things fit together. But we heard over and over from our clients, which we served exclusively owners of closely held businesses and entrepreneurs and their families. And we heard over and over they were so thankful that we could help steer them through the morass of choices with insurance, as we were
Interesting.
paid strictly on a retainer basis. And we would help them run interference and go find the most effective insurance tools. They knew we were not being paid for the sale of insurance, so they were happy to just turn it over to us and have us find a solution. And yeah, we just heard over and over they were so thankful because they were so tired of dealing with the insurance industry. And so, having heard that for long enough, it matched up with when my daughter was born, and I had an even stronger interest, as you know, being a parent. When that comes home, things become much more real and urgent to make the positive changes you want to see.
Another female in your life, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, it makes perfect sense that I had a daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I looked at, right, how do I blend those two, my understanding and background in finance and insurance and risk management, and bring it to a platform that could drive a lot more change. The insurance industry is second only to pensions and the number of assets they manage. It's over $30 trillion globally that the insurance industry manages.
Did you say 30 trillion?
In excess of 30 trillion, yes.
Wow. Amazing. Big number.
Yeah, when you look at the power and influence of their investment portfolio, and then you have all the influence from their actual insurance products. And insurance, in many ways, is simply a lever to make capital available in certain circumstances. You might need to insure a building in order to build it. You might need to, insure yourself with life insurance if you want to feel comfortable having kids, or, taking a loan from a bank to start a business. insurance in many ways is that facilitator that makes it possible to take risks, or start projects, get financing that you might not otherwise be able to. And that applies at the household level, at businesses, and really large projects. Some of the projects that maybe we wish weren't built, they can only get financing because there's an insurance company providing coverage. So it's an interesting industry that's very boring in some ways, but is woven into almost every aspect of our lives and has a tremendous amount of influence. So that's where I decided, that's where I'll enter into the insurance space, and back to that phrase of systems change, try to bring the environmental and social side into the decision making and value chain of insurance.
I'm just writing down insurance is a lever. I'm teaching at my alma mater. We are actually in the insurance section right now. And I try to highlight how interesting all right, I don't try to highlight how interesting it is. I try to highlight how important it is that
Right.
without insurance, all the other fancy stuff we do as financial advisors can go away in a flash. And so I do agree with you on both counts. It comes across as less interesting, but
Yes.
its importance is just huge. Lastly, before we go into some of the Q&A, Nathan, tell us about Chef Ann Foundation. It's obviously important to you, so make it important to us.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal nonprofit that brings healthy scratch cooking to school districts K through 12 around the country. They tend to focus on underserved school districts where food insecurity can be a very big concern. And this again was, tied directly to why I started Bluestone Life. There's a way to direct both philanthropic aspects as well as investment capital from the insurance industry into community development projects for things like central kitchens that can serve schools and makes it possible for more healthy scratch cooking. And there's a lot of other things that come from that when you look at the whole value chain of starting with putting a healthy scratch cooked meal on a kid's plate, all the things that have to happen behind it. It requires workforce development because you have to be more skilled to do scratch cooking than simply heat and serve of ultra processed foods. So you're talking about higher wages and more respect on the workforce development. It then leads to supply chain resilience because you're purchasing more local ingredients. You can have direct relationships with farmers. You can provide them with cold storage space. It unlocks, labor, supply chain resilience. You're supporting your local economy. Obviously, the kids are healthier, so attendance is better. Academics are better. Our kids are in a position to serve, whether it's in the military or in other ways in their community. So it's, in an interesting way, it was another one of those, to me, that sounds a little boring compared to all the exciting nonprofits that we also support out there. But it's another enormous systems change tool. There are 30 million school meals served a day. Those are a lot of opportunities to improve local economies and environment and to help our kids thrive.
Thanks for sharing some about that, Nathan. It is another great cause, and to think about it for the supply chain up and down, that's a smart way to think about it. Probably other nonprofits we need to think about similarly to really understand their impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get to your Q&A.
Okay.
This is an exciting part. So sustainable risk management or sustainable insurance. This is a topic that I think is new to a lot of people. We hear a lot about what's sort of happening that's wrong with our environment that needs to be changed. And then there's insurance. And then how do the two meet? First thing, what is your response, Nathan, to the current news we're seeing both with the cleanup with Hurricane Helene and the storm that's right behind it, already Category 4, Hurricane Milton?
Yeah, it's a complex situation, obviously. Most scientists believe that humans are certainly accelerating the rate of climate change that leads to many of these stronger storms than we have had the last 100 years. It's really challenging given the economic structure. One of the big things for us is externalities are not priced in. So many of the things that we do when we go out and purchase things, whether it's a house on the beach or whether it's a kind of food, it doesn't fully price in all the environmental and social impacts and costs of that purchase. So when you see devastating things like hurricanes, there are certainly some instances where you can see clearly houses were built in places where environmentalists would have said this is really not a good idea. As the tides change and water levels rise, this is going to be put at risk. And there are other people that, of course, didn't choose to build in areas like that, but the storms have become so strong that it's affecting a very wide swath of the population. So it's challenging. As big as the insurance industry is, it's not as big as government. And ultimately, I think it's going to take a collaboration of policy change at the government level, matched up with the insurance industry helping. And probably the types of coverage will need to change, like starting to bring in things like a relocation expense or a rebuild expense that might cost significantly more than what is considered to be an ordinary replacement cost right now. For example, if you're in an area that is going to, for the foreseeable future, have more storms, whether it's wind or flooding, you're either, and your house is destroyed in one of these events, it makes sense if you're going to rebuild to do it in a way that the house, can last for many decades. But that replacement cost to build that property is going to be much higher than the normal construction methods we've used so far. Or for some people, they may decide that that area is so high risk, it doesn't make sense to rebuild. And it would be nice to have the insurance industry build in more things like an additional relocation expense so they could choose to move to an area that didn't have those types of risks and rebuild somewhere else. So yeah, it's a really big challenge. And I think it's going to take, again, policy change aligned with the insurance industry, providing more flexible and different types of coverage to help address these macro problems.
Yeah, you mentioned location in certain states and regions, and I just had heard something today because it's topical, the idea that, Florida may be losing their growth. As financial advisors, we work with people who want to go to a tax-free state, and that's been an attraction for Florida for many years. In fact, I think this was a Wall Street Journal article. And with the challenge of just getting insurance, just getting property insurance in Florida, the cost benefit analysis is starting to change. Nathan, what is sustainable insurance?
Well, for most people probably listening to this, when they think of sustainable, there's very little insurance that would meet that qualification right now.
Sure.
So at this point, it's a lot more the approach and doing the best you can. Sometimes it's, for example, where you choose to live or the things you choose to insure. It's somewhat tied to consumption. The fewer things you own that you need to insure, of course, the less you need to spend money on insurance. And then it's what you're insuring. So again, are you building in a way that's highly sustainable for the environment that you're living in, whether you're in an area like Phoenix that can have extraordinarily high heat, or in a place like Florida where wind or water and storms can have a big impact. So a lot of it actually comes to each of us as individuals deciding what to own, what to insure, and where it is. And then there is a difference. There is a terrific nonprofit out there called Insure Our Future. And they provide a scorecard for insurance companies and how well they're doing on addressing environmental and social issues. And if they're insuring highly extractive or damaging projects, they're very clear about what companies are actively trying to improve and which ones are not. So that's a great resource and a direct way for a consumer to look for a more responsible company.
And is that insure like IN?
Correct. Like insurance, but Insure Our Future.
.org, I assume.
Correct. Yep, it's a nonprofit.
Okay. Yeah, terrific. Appreciate those nuggets that we can take away. How is Bluestone Life incorporating sustainable insurance practices as a life insurance company, health insurance, disability? How are you doing that?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons we chose to enter the insurance industry in that space is we had the ability to pull more sustainability through all parts of the value chain, starting with the product itself. The people that purchase something like life insurance, they're doing it for people other than themselves. So you're already, talking to a person who's, they're getting this insurance, they're already gone. So clearly they care about who's left behind and what they're taking care of. So that's a great mindset for thinking ahead around things like environment, what your community's like. And then also, one company can service values aligned customers from around the country. That's what Bluestone does. We built our own products that are transparent, high value, easy to purchase. We partnered and have our insurance policy issued by the only certified B Corp life insurance carrier in the world. And everything about the value chain, we've thought about pulling that. To us, it's centered around the family, community, and planet. And that if you're actually going to protect your family, you need to also protect your community and the planet where they're going to live. So we tie everything in with things like being a certified B Corp, where you need to be transparent and show that you're treating all your stakeholders well. And then down to the individual policy level. When somebody purchases insurance from us, the costs are transparent. It's interesting for us, all the investment reserves that back Bluestone policies are invested in impact investments, primarily renewable energy right now. We also provide a free additional death benefit that's payable to a nonprofit. So someone pays their premium for the amount of coverage they're getting for their family. If a claim is paid, their family gets all the insurance that they paid for. We provide an additional death benefit bequest payable to a nonprofit that the customer gets to choose. The reason we do that is it's back to the family, community, planet. It's how everything ties together. While you're a customer, your premiums are invested in a congruent way. And if there's a claim, your family gets the money directly from the death benefit, and then money also flows into a nonprofit. And high impact nonprofits do invaluable work taking care of communities and the planet in areas where the government or for-profit businesses have not been able to provide those services. Organizations like the Chevin Foundation. So to us, that's bringing it full circle, that your insurance is doing something valuable while you're alive in where the premiums are invested. And if there should be a claim, your family's taken care of, and the extra money goes to a nonprofit who cares for your community and the planet.
So I'm going to review those because it's important that we figure this out here about that true difference that Bluestone is providing to the market. Firstly, all reserves are backed by impact investments. So I guess the premiums that are coming in and the reserves that are being accumulated for the benefit of taking care of beneficiaries, those are invested in a sustainable way. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And then there's an additional 1% bequest over and above that death benefit claim that is just coming from the insurance company, from your Bluestone Life and your partners, that is going towards a nonprofit of the choosing of the insured, just as a benefit kicker. Like I was going to say a Benny and benefit, and I combined the words benefit, but just as a kicker for values, it's an opportunity.
Yeah, it all, again, comes back to us, that family, community, planet, that if you're going to care for your family, they need, of course, a great community and planet to live on as well. So if we tie back to, say, the Chevin Foundation, if a family has $1 million of coverage, we provide an additional $10,000 bequest. And if someone chose the Chevin Foundation to receive that money, if there is a death and a claim, the family gets the whole $1 million. That additional $10,000, which has no additional cost to the customer, that's something that Bluestone provides. That no additional cost, that gets paid to the Chevin Foundation. They can turn around and use that to improve the scratch cooking at yet another school district. Ideally, it could be a school district where your kids are going to school and are going to be eating the food, and all the other advantages we talked about, that when you do scratch cooking, you have less waste, more local products, which is, of course, highly beneficial to the child and to the environment.
Now, are people able to choose that nonprofit, or is there a list that you typically provide?
They are allowed to choose. We certainly have our preferences for what we would consider to be high impact nonprofit, but there's many incredible nonprofits out there with community development, financial institutions, and all sorts of organizations that you can find something. I think it's important that you're personally passionate about and involved in, because the more we pay attention to something, the more interesting it is, and we can find other ways to support that nonprofit through the work we do, whether it's monetary gifts or volunteering our time or where you purchase your insurance.
And there was a third element to the impact that your firm is creating for the marketplace, and that was I mean, number one, Bluestone Life is a certified B corporation, and then you partner with the other insurance companies that are certified B corporations, or did I get that wrong?
There's actually yes, Bluestone itself is a certified B Corp and a 1% for the Planet member. Our insurance carrier partner, Assurity, they are the only certified B Corp life insurance carrier, I believe, in the world. So that's certainly one of the reasons we chose them. They also are a mutual company, which means the policyholders actually own the insurance company, not third-party stockholders. So it also provides that chance for advocacy, which is important, really sort of parallel to policy. That as a policyholder in a mutual insurance company, you get to vote for the board of directors and to bring forward other important business. So our customers vote, in those annual proxies and let the company know that they appreciate them being a B Corp, and also with our assistance prod the company to do more positive things like find additional impact investments that are still highly prudent financially, so that claims can be paid, but are contributing to the health of the communities and planet.
Great. And so, yeah, you mentioned so B corporation, and if you could lean in again to that definition of a B corporation, and you also mentioned 1% for the Planet, which is an organization that your team introduced us to.
Yeah, they're both terrific organizations. I think a lot of people have viewed being a certified B Corp as being more through the social lens. And you go through a very rigorous process of how you treat all your stakeholders, where you get your energy from that's consumed, to run the business, how you treat family leave, do you have inclusive ownership? There are many, many different aspects that you go through, and you're assigned a score at the end depending on how well you do, and that is public. So someone's able to go to bcorporation.net. There's a nonprofit that certifies for-profit companies. So there's a significant level of transparency there that anybody can log on, and there's a public site. They can look up Bluestone, they can look up any other certified B Corp and see what their score is and how well they're doing in different categories. So that's really important. And the other organization we talked about that we're both members of is 1% for the Planet. And that is an organization that brings together for-profit companies that are members and nonprofit partners like the Chef Ann Foundation. So a for-profit company commits to giving a minimum of 1% of their revenue, as you know, and for them, it's environmentally focused nonprofits. So it's really a great balance between the certified B corporations and the 1% for the Planet, because one has a legal structure and the way you go through many different aspects of your business, how you run it, your vendor policy, who you bank with, all sorts of important things. And then 1% for the Planet makes it tangible from a monetary standpoint that you have to document that you've given at least 1% of your revenue, not your profit, to nonprofits who are helping out community and planet. So that's another element of Bluestone is we also make philanthropic investments each year as part of our membership with 1% for the Planet.
Yeah, it's a great organization, a great certifying body that, as you mentioned, allows you then to go and identify a nonprofit affiliated or associated with environmental causes locally or nationally, which is really neat. We chose a local firm to point our resources to, and then we, support 1% for the Planet. Well, a couple other things before we close here. You've got something new, a climate risk assessment for homes. Why don't you give us a little color around that? I think it's in beta.
No, it's fully available now. It's not ours.
Okay.
It's just again part of our network. We don't sell homeowners insurance or provide advice on it, but it's something that's become so important to so many of our customers. There are some zip codes where a very high percentage of residents are having their homeowners insurance canceled, and they have to reapply, and in many cases go through a mitigation process. So it's something, again, that we knew was top of mind and is needed by many customers. So we actually utilize the services. We pay for a nonprofit who provides these services, and we're able to run a risk assessment on any residents in the country. So it's an additional service that ties, again, back to our family, community, and planet approach, that the home is obviously a really, really important asset for the family. And a safe, enjoyable place, hopefully to live. So that's a way that we can provide an extra value. And then they can take that report and go work with their insurance broker or insurance company and talk about the mitigation steps they've taken, which could hopefully lower their premium. And it may also help them find a company or a broker that's, aligned with their values. Often you can find a local or a regional mutual insurance company that may align more with your values and be more strategic in what risks they choose to assume and how they invest their assets. So it's yet another opportunity to be aware of risks, hopefully mitigate them and reduce your premium. And finally, hopefully you can find an insurance broker, an insurance company who's working on these same issues.
And Nathan, I think it was Asheville, North Carolina. I watched the news and they were saying that recently they had a 1% chance of flooding. And so most people, about 90% plus, did not have flood insurance because why would you need it in that part of North Carolina? And
Yeah.
so, maybe this assessment kind of gives you an updated score. Is that what we could expect?
Yeah, they look ahead and will show the risks of various factors like heat, air quality, flooding, and things like that over the next 30 years and what the percent chance is of one of those events happening and what level of damage would occur to your house. Of course, nothing is exactly accurate, but I think their modeling takes into account that some of these storms are certainly not 1 in 100 years anymore. They're happening much more frequently. And as you noted, in places where they may, in memory, have not had that type of event like flooding. So I do think it's a really important factor and have people be aware of the risks that exist and, again, mitigate and hopefully find an insurance provider that can provide a more holistic type of coverage for them.
No, thank you for that. Well, the last question on this list, I think, just speaks to who you are and maybe gives us another layer of the mindset. Tell us, how does Stoicism play a role in everything that you're doing and that you're a part of and that you're seeing and that you care about?
It's interesting. I had come across Stoicism when I was a teenager, and certain very small parts stuck, but a lot escaped me at the time.
Yeah.
And I guess 7 years or so ago, I came back across it. I can't remember what the nugget was that attracted me, but once I got back into it a little, I was struck by one of the first questions that approach asks you is, do you have a philosophy of life? I thought about it and realized I had a list in my mind of things that were important, but it wasn't really codified in what I would consider to be a philosophy of life. I love how they were so active. A big part of Stoicism was being active in your community, active in politics, and actively working to make a difference. They make a big point about virtue rather than values, which really appealed to me because virtues have to do with what you do, concrete actions, and they boil it down into a very simple approach of what they refer to as the cardinal virtues. And to them, those are comprised of courage, wisdom, self-control, and justice. I just found it such a straightforward, concrete way to think about philosophy of life and your relationships, business and at home, and how you think about things really resonated with me. I also like that it wasn't, certainly given what politics have been like in the country, I really like that it was universal to me. I think people from all different political persuasions would agree that that would be a good way to lead your life. And there are many ways you can choose where your emphasis goes, but I love such a straightforward, the 4 cardinal virtues, and here are the things to think about when you have a philosophy of life. So it's been really valuable, a grounding tool for me.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting and insightful. There's a gentleman who is essentially one of those experts who is really focused on, I'm sure you know him, on Stoicism. He's a younger guy. He's written the book called The Daily Stoic. And for a while, I think it was 2023, maybe the first half of the year, reading these 2 pages a day,
Yeah,
just to give you an idea, right? Do you remember, is it Ryan Holiday? Is that his name?
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. didn't know I could pull that from my head so easily. But yeah, Ryan Holiday. Well, thank you for this. I'm going to switch over to big faces here, at least one big face at a time. And before we transition here and let this time end, is there one thing that you imagine that if people could grab onto and take forward from this presentation, that would help them in being more intentional around sustainability and in particular with their risk management?
Yeah, no, a phrase that came to me a while ago, what popped into my head when you asked me that question is that action is the antidote. And
Yeah.
by antidote, meaning feeling detached or frustrated with the way things are going. So I think that's a big part of it is whenever I start to feel frustrated with a situation or with a policy, I try to remind myself action is the antidote. So what's the next concrete step I can take? And, whether that's making a donation to the right place or volunteering or, reading a good book, choosing the right bank if you're, in your personal life. And if you happen to be part of a business and get to make choices around where the business places its finances, there are actually many, many ways that you can take concrete action that do make a difference. And it may feel pretty incremental, one person at a time. But yeah, it's powerful when you make those conscious, intentional decisions. And there are many ways to do it now. Action
is the antidote. Thank you. Nathan Irons, founder and CEO of Bluestone Life. Unsurprisingly, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
With that, I yield the balance of your time.